And thank you very much for inviting me along today. And I'd just start by saying, a bit like the Neo speaker just now, I also have discovered what a cool place Estonia is. And I'm so proud to be here. And I'm not going to suggest I didn't know where Estonia was on the map. Of course, I did. A Baltic state. But had I ever been here before? No. Had I ever been to Tallinn? Was I going to come here? No. Was I missing out? Yes. So I'm also an enthusiastic convert like the previous speaker. As already mentioned, Delft University of Technology is my main base. I live in the beautiful city of Delft. Anyone here been to Delft? Who's been to Delft? That's lovely. There's a load of you been to Delft. Lovely place, always welcome, beautiful city, very historic, just like Tallinn. I also sit on the executive board of EIT Raw Materials. I also have a company, Defence Invest, that we're trying to grow, and I'm very proud to be working together with Sally and other colleagues from all over Estonia, developing up a roadmap for critical raw materials, which I'll touch on very briefly. First of all, a sort of step back. It's all about demand and supply. And over the holiday period, Christmas, New Year, I got myself a nice book on economics. I thought I'll just brush up back on economic basics. And then page 1, economic basics. It's all about demand and supply in an economy. So I kind of thought, yeah, it's the core of economics. And as the previous speaker suggested, it's looking like pretty certain that at various points in time, demand is outstripping the ability to supply. And I talk about it's not a technology problem, it's not an investment problem, it's not a people problem, it's a time problem. We don't have enough time. Now, if you're a little bit looking backwards, you go, yeah, we kind of wasted about 25, 30 years knowing this was coming, and then we sort of, but humans are like this, right? You know, the dripping tap. Yeah, when are you going to fix that? Next weekend. And then, it just keeps dripping, and then eventually it starts leaking, and then, I've got to fix it. So it's kind of a little bit like that. I think humans are like this. But here we see some selected materials. It's a few years old now, this graphic, but you get a feel. And it's really interesting with students and people that are not familiar with demand and supply in organizations or economies. And they kind of go ×4 or ×6. Well, that doesn't look too bad. But I always tell my students, this evening what you're going to do is going to go and buy groceries, but you're actually going to buy ×4 more. And everybody's going to buy ×4 more. So I'd give the supermarket about 15 to 20 minutes, and it's empty. And then you go, yeah, but supply chains will catch up. And you go, yeah, they will eventually. But in the meantime, you're going to have a few hungry weeks, maybe. So you begin to see how these numbers here are pretty scary. And again, they're not shifting. Just a little reminder as well, and that's maybe why the question I asked. So the EU policy, which of course is Estonian policy on this topic, because Estonia, like nearly all other member states in the Union, does not do its own criticality assessment. We do it jointly as part of an EU exercise. And policy on critical materials is EU driven. So it's not all policy, but it's EU driven fundamentally. And the core areas for the EU policy with demand for CRM is energy transition tech, as was just mentioned, wind turbines, etc., digital tech, and defense, (aerospace space. So that was why my question just now. Quite right, it's not a big part of the demand for rare earths, for example, but it focuses minds. And I also tell my Dutch colleagues, when you live here, defense has a different meaning and a different feeling. And I feel it every time I'm here. and I'm with you, so I feel strongly about it. The figures here, 2030, give or take, depending on what your calendars and holidays are, but it's about 1,000 working days, 2030. And it's always interesting, because when I do this audiences, you see people going, no, 1,000 working days, really? And you go, well, give or take. So it's not long, is it? Where's my life going? I like to look back a little bit, go back in time. And the reason I did this, and I did this in my PhD 10 years ago this year, I did my PhD. I don't think I understand what the hell is going on with critical materials. I've been looking at it for about 20 years, and I really don't think I understand it. I'm really curious if anyone else in the room thinks they do really understand it. Have a chat with me at the coffee break and explain it all to me, because I'm really, really curious. It's dynamic, it's variable, it's poorly understood, data is either non-existent or poor. We don't really know what the hell is going on. And especially in terms of policy, we don't really understand what the hell's going on. And we just wait for the next Truth Social post to decide what we're going to do next, or whatever comes out of Beijing or wherever else. And so we're kind of just reeling with the blows a little bit. And I found it quite useful to go back in time, and here we are, 1880. And now I'm doing my Estonian history. This was part of the Tsarist Russia then, I guess. 1880 before 1918. Am I right? Estonia founded 1918. Correct? Nodding of heads. Yes, 1918, I think. And I looked through, and I quite like this work from this project in 2010, because I like this long view of looking at overarching regimes, political regimes, and minerals. And I quite like how this plays out. And then we look all through the post-World War II era. And if you look down at the bottom there, the time period over which criticality frameworks, in other words, the methodologies and the approach of how we think we understand critical materials, was formed in this liberal capitalism, US ran the world, liberalism, multinational corporations. And I would argue, and this is a tough statement, EU and Estonia, and definitely Netherlands, is still mentally trying to live in that world. But that world has gone, and boy, has it gone this year, because I've had a go at trying to put something on the next row below. And actually, I ran out of words. It's too many words, and it should be a lot more simple, but I couldn't make it any simpler. So, for example, the overarching regime. Well, there isn't one. It's gone. Sorry, that was 20th century talk. That's gone. There is no overarching. It's the end of the post-war order. There's some kind of neo-imperialism seems to be returning. And we're definitely fragmented into power blocks. And fragmenting at an accelerating pace. So the whole idea of Bretton Woods, GATT, world trade, free trade, globalization, I think even the most conservative are beginning to rip up the rule book. It's gone. So who are the great powers? Well, China's a great power and growing. So tick. USA, but is that USA plus Monroe Doctrine? If you don't know what I mean by Monroe Doctrine, that means the US backyard, North and South America is United States. And we've seen geopolitical moves on that in the case of Greenland recently. Venezuela, of course, is the other example, and. So question mark. Europe. Well, we heard this week discussions of, Europe needs to move towards a much more united state, because actually as a set of independent member states we can't actually operate because we're not a great power if we don't. And if we don't do that, we're just middle ranking at best, or in the case of Netherlands and Estonia, low ranking or almost irrelevant. So there's a key moment there, question mark. Russia, great power, nuclear, massive army as we fear and know, question mark. India, definitely coming up. Definitely coming up. Great power in the world will be making decisions in the 21st century, definitely. And then, as I just mentioned, the middle powers, question mark. And then we see this idea of North-South relations, again, conflict, risk, resource nationalism, neocolonialism, I mentioned already, and this inter-great power rivalry is here to stay. So it's not a great news story, is it? It's not quite what we hoped for. But it's not a surprise if you look at the line above, it was coming. So again, we knew this in the beginning of the 21st century. We just hoped it wouldn't happen. Here we go. So what's, sorry for my mad diagram, but I'll explain it. Global trends, what's going on? We see European Union, import dependent, especially China. Well, if you cast your eye down below, same with the US. What's the strategy? The main policy in Europe is the Critical Raw Materials Act, as I just mentioned. But what about the member states? What are the critical raw material policies of the member states? I can tell you now, and I know I sound British, but I'm become a Dutch citizen, I have no clear idea what my new government, which formed on Friday, I have no clear idea what the critical material policies of the Netherlands are. None at all. I don't know what actions, what policies, what funding, I have no idea. I'm not that clear on Estonia either. That's something we're working on to try and help, but we're not that clear. And investments, we heard just now from Neo, it is important. And I'm not just talking about government investments, sovereign funds, I'm talking about private sector, which does the heavy lifting. But what do we see? We don't know. And then we switch over again, the focus, partnerships, domestic mining, process and recycling. We see a similar picture in the USA. The only difference is, and I put it at the bottom, is it secure new territory too? That's unclear. We don't really know. And what does secure mean? I think there's a feeling possibly in the United States now that they begin to follow the Chinese example, where we see, and I'm putting the focus there, the global mining projects control, so that there's a strong control in one way or another from China. So that's what my arrows are trying to show. I don't know whether I show it very well. That's the kind of scene. What do we see, and I always just remind people on this, and the term criticality. The fundamental model of criticality is shown in the top left-hand model with supply risk and economic importance. And you do an assessment on the two. And then you draw lines on a graph and anything in the top right-hand box. If you're not familiar with this, this is fundamental risk assessment. That's basically what it is. Developed in the USA in the late 20th century. That's where it comes from. It's an American model, which we have adopted. The number of assessments you see on the bar chart on the right, that's how many times EU has done the assessment. They are currently doing the 2026 assessment as we speak, and I think there are colleagues in the room involved in that work. And I applaud you for doing it, because it's not easy. It's a lot of work. This is the list that we have from the 2023 assessment. So this is the Estonian list. This is the Dutch list. It's what we have. Just for, I don't know if it helps or not, but I've tried to put it into some boxes. And I don't know if you've seen this before, but everything on here is critical raw materials. Then you see the red lines there. They're all metals. Then I've tried to do the light rare earths and the heavy rare earths. And then you've got this little thing with scandium, which is always good fun. And then the platinum group metals. And then there's this concept of strategic raw materials. And I don't have time to go into what is the difference between a strategic raw material and a critical raw material, and why are there two lists, and why does the Critical Raw Materials Act only look at strategic raw materials, and. If we had the whole afternoon, we could have a go at doing that, but I can't. But that's, I think, how it lays out. And if I'm wrong, somebody tell me at the break I'm wrong. Already been touched on by the Neo speaker. I'm not going to dwell on this too long. Benchmarks. I used to write up, these were legally requirements. I don't think they're benchmarks. Are we going to hit them? No. No way, no how. There's only 1,000 days left. There just isn't enough time left. And there hasn't been enough investment. What interests me is the bottom one, the 65%, which nobody looks at much. Because in theory, what that's saying is, if Europe has more than 65% dependence on one country, the other actions shown, especially with primary and secondary supply, must replace it. Nobody in member states, I don't hear the Commission talking about the 65%. It's in the Act, and nobody wants to open the Act up again, but nobody's talking about it. I mean, who here was familiar with the 65% thing? A few hands. Yeah, nobody was familiar with the 65% thing. It's one or two. Yes, exactly. So that interests me a lot. What are we going to do with this? Are we going to do this? This is enshrined in a piece of legislation. This is not a directive. It's an act. Question mark. So what are we doing? I'm going to finish off now. Estonian actions. Years of work by colleagues in Geological Survey and knowledge partners across Estonia have given us a good steer on primary resources. More work to do, but I think we've got a solid base there. No pun intended. Processing actions, yes. We just heard from Neo. That was a good example of a company developing, but there's much more besides. Strong engagement with Brussels, and that's partly why I'm here as well, and CRM-related actions. And as I mentioned before, we got a baseline analysis for materials technology roadmap for Estonia that I'm proud to be part of, and we're developing that, and that will report in due course. As I just mentioned, we're planning to meet the deadlines for 2030, question mark. But why only 2030? What about 2035? What about 2040? Where's the strategic road mapping for Europe? Where's the strategic road mapping for Estonia? It's kind of like the world is going to stop in 2030 and we're all going to be able to take a big pause. It's not going to be like that. The problems we've got now are probably just going to be bigger in 2030 than they are now. So where's the planning? I'm missing that. Definitely opportunities for Estonian organizations. And as I mentioned, and I know I keep mentioning it, but I think it's going to get more and more and more important, defense. And even though, quite rightly, the assessment from our colleague from NEO said it's not a big slice of the market, no, but it's number one on the agenda for any government cabinet meeting. Defense and security of the state is number one. Yeah, way below, everything else goes way below that. So I think, and that's my question I asked earlier, is this a driver for change? And the answer is yes. And then I have two words of Estonian that I know. Aita, I know that, so I try and use that. And strangely, piim, milk. I have no idea why. And it's just fixed in my head, and I wander around and go, piim.
Do you drink it?
Yeah, well, in my tea and
That's
coffee.
That's a start.
Yeah. Yeah.
Anyway. There was a comment from the audience that you should also know another word that doesn't start with P, but it's very similar.
Oh.
Veen.
Veen. Oh, like wine, I guess.
Vodka.
Oh, vodka. Oh.
A little bit stronger. Thank you, David.
Anyway, thank you very much.
Any questions? An applause, please, first. Any questions? This is not very official conference where you have to look very serious all the time.
There's a question.
It has to be like a brainstorm, communication, sharing the bits and pieces that every one of us knows. I can talk and walk.
Great, thank you. I'm Priit Maasing from the Foreign Ministry. Just a really simple question. Do you know where did those EU benchmarks come from?
From the whose?
The EU benchmarks, those 65%.
Oh, that's from the CRMA.
How did they come up?
Yeah, yes. There's I know a former Commission colleague called Peter Handley, very nice guy. He now works a little bit in the Netherlands. He's based in Brussels. He was one of the lead team. You know probably better than me how EU regulation works with the trilogue. Yeah, the train, as they call it, where it has to go through the Commission, which then goes to the Parliament, which then goes back to the Commission with the Council involved, and blah, 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 blah. One thing I know, and I observed, it went through really fast. I mean, less than a year, when normally acts take years and years and years. So that was interesting. I think it came from researchers in the Commission. I think the JRC, Joint Research Council, was involved, and definitely DG GROW. They were key drivers, key actors in that. The detail of names and who, I don't know. But that was where it came from. But in theory, because it went through the Council, it was approved by Estonia. Correct.
Oops.
No, that's how it works, right?
Actually, I think it was yesterday, or was it today, that the European Court of Auditors published their fresh audit about the Critical Raw Materials Act.
I read it.
And I didn't. You read it?
I read the headlines.
The news. Yeah. I didn't have enough time to go through it as well.
No.
But it's something interesting to read. And the first things I noticed from the summary, maybe the act was done in a bit too quickly.
Yes, it was.
Because the auditors are not kind, they're not happy about the act.
No.
But at the same time, like you told us, we don't have time.
No.
So, hard place at the rock and us in between.
One of the big issues, and you'll know this, many of you better than me, permitting. So we heard about permitting just now for a magnet factory. That's less controversial, I could argue. Permitting for new mine. And then I've had discussions with member states. So it's strategic projects that have accelerated permitting. And I was having a conversation. I know we've got a Finnish colleague here as well. I remember I was in Finland a couple of years ago and I said, if there's a strategic project in Finland, then the permitting will be accelerated. And then it was like, no, you don't understand Finnish law. We can't do that. And I go, sorry, this act is supreme over Finnish law. And there we get the beginning of a big argument. Who's in charge? I'll leave it there.
Any other questions? Oh, I know I'm really bad with the clock. I'm almost a geologist by now. So for me, billions of years are important, not the minutes, seconds. They're keep talking about hours, but what are hours? Any questions over there? Yes?
I feel obliged not to ask, but to comment, because I just came in and very sorry I had another task, but I was the attaché at that time negotiating this act.
Yeah.
So you can put all the blame on me. At the moment I'm working in the Ministry of Economic Affairs, the Deputy Secretary General for Strategy and Services. It's a long name. But yes, I can comment. Yes, Peter Handley is definitely one behind those. You can blame him. Yeah. But the problem is that you say we have to be ambitious and we have to do something. So, yes, it was certainly Commissioner Breton who wanted it to be negotiated very, very quickly. So it was very much pressed. Why I say... We had a lot of talk about these numbers, but we also said that, okay, maybe it's good to have it because although it's law, it's not obligation.
Yes.
It's ambitious task. It's definitely, we could all understand that it's too ambitious, but we more focused on the things that could help it, like this. This permitting certainly was one of the biggest issues for all of the member states, and some other issues. Yeah. So we thought we can't kill this number, but we have to be sure that it's not legally binding, and it's also ambitious, but we know that it's not realistic. We also commented that it's not realistic. But I don't think it's so bad about this act, and you can change it. At the moment, Commission has opened Critical Raw Materials Act, so it's just the moment. But just to say that, yeah, you can say member state didn't fight it. Yes, we fight it other places.
I have to say, personally, I'm a big fan. I think the Commission and all the stakeholders involved did the best job in the timescales they had and set upon themselves. And I think urgency was important, so I agree with the speed. Of course, when you do things quickly, you can't check everything in the same way. And yes, it's not ideal and it's not perfect, but I think it was the best job. And I just mentioned the big number that changed the most when it went through Parliament, European Parliament, was the recycling target. It started off at 15%, and that was based on careful analysis that colleagues in JRC did. That was a stretch target. Obviously, we have the Greens and other parties in Parliament said, no, I want it higher. And so they pushed it up to 25, which is even more of a stretch target. But yeah, I think it's right, and it's good that they're not mandatory, because if they were, nightmare. We can't hit a lot of them. So, but I look to the member states, and this is constantly an argument I have. We have to have the member states. I can see we have to stop.
Thank you. Thank you, David. And now an applause, please. A huge one.